Well, plus Sean, we got this little tropical future that moved across the southeast, brought some much needed rain to a portion of Texas, Louisiana through the Caribbean this afternoon. Alright, we're also watching this little tropical wave here. It's supposed to develop into something tropical. Like I said, thumbs up. Alright, well, let's go ahead and continue. Alright, as you can see here is Tropical Storm Sean this afternoon. Still kind of poorly remain a tropical storm, not to become a hurricane. As you can see here, just some convection blowing up around the center. We got two parts of this system, one to the east, one to the west. The center is kind of in this area right here, so there's not no we're going to take a look at the forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, the Spaghetti-O models, and also we're going to take a look at the all right. Okay, first up here we go. Alright, you can see here's the Tropical Storm Force wind field in the yellow. 11 a.m. advisory. We're located at latitude 13.1 north, longitude 37.2 west. Maximum sustained winds are near 40 miles an hour with higher gusts, and movement is to the northwest at 10 miles per hour. According to the National Hurricane Center, by 8 a.m. Friday should remain a tropical storm, then become a tropical depression once again by Friday evening, and then Saturday morning, and it is into a post-tropical cyclone by Saturday afternoon and evening, and Sunday morning still remain a post-tropical cyclone and shouldn't have to worry about Sean too much after that. Alright, Spaghetti-O models here. We're going to take a look at the hurricane model. Everybody call it spaghetti model, but I'm gonna call it the hurricane models and the spaghetti models together. So anyway, here's the center of the storm, well compacted all the way through about 72 hours out. Then it kind of converged a little bit on day 5 on out to about 120 hours out. But anyway, it kind of dissipates it because it's not going to make the trip, because there's a cold front, kind of some wind shear and a cold front to the north should kind of weaken the storm down and should just rip it all apart, and should be the end of Sean. Alright, let's take a look at the intensity guidance. Right now I have 35 knot winds equal to 40 miles per hour in the tropical storm force wind. One keeps it a tropical storm, but most of the model drops off into a depression, and I do agree with this here. It should weaken over the eastern tropical Atlantic because the waters are starting to get a little cooler out there, because all of the tropical activity we had earlier this year should weaken the system down, and we shouldn't have to worry about Sean. Alright, now here is Invest 94L, which looks to become Tropical Storm Tammy sometime later on down the road. Excuse me. Alright, but this is the convection of the storm here, as you can see here. Starting to get its act together a little bit, but not too much though. But as you can see here, I get a little bit of convection right here. I think that's pretty, but I think the convection is still way over here. But anyway, we're going to take a look at some information on this system. But like I say, it looks pretty raggedy this afternoon, not very well organized. Look a little better organized. Alright, you can see here, here's the current position of the storm. Keeps it to the west and then kind of to the, pretty much just westward, west, northwest, northwestward. And it keeps it over here in about about 5 days out. Should be over in this area here. They were pretty well compacted all the way through the event. So we're going to say it's going to move to the west, northwest pretty well over the next several days. Alright, let's take a look at the intensity guidance of this system. As you can see, it's got 25 knot winds equal to 30 miles per hour, still well below tropical storm status or even tropical depression status, 5 miles per hour below it. According to this, it keeps it through about, let's see, 48 to 72 hours out. It may become a tropical storm. Yesterday, you remember yesterday I showed the map. This thing shot it way up to a category 3. There were about 3 or 4 models shot up to a category 3. I did not believe that. But like I say, it do look like it should become a tropical storm. So, but I'm pretty sure, I think it will become Tropical Storm Tammy, probably coming up in the next maybe in the next few days or maybe sometime early next week. Alright, well, that's your tropical update. Now we're going to move on to our local severe weather to talk about across the nation as well. Alright, you can see here we got a little bit of gale warnings up here around the New York City area and also up toward portions of the Boston, Massachusetts region. Also down in the coastal waters off the southeast coast. Also right along the Carolina coast from the Outer Banks of North Carolina to the Florida Keys all the way back over to southern Alabama. There's that tornado watch I was talking about earlier in the video. The tornado watch has been posted for northern and central Florida. Special marine warnings off the coastal areas on the west side near Tampa. Also over toward Jacksonville, Florida, just east of you guys, and also just east of Melbourne. Got a few gale warnings there as well. Also a lake wind advisory also in effect for some gusty winds down across southeast Florida. Alright, we got a wind advisory also posted for portions of Oklahoma, also into Kansas, also much of South Dakota. We have high wind warnings also in effect for you guys in Kansas, also in Nebraska, portions of Colorado as well. Also in the portions of New Mexico also. We have some fire weather issues. Remember last night, you're welcome to check out last night's video. I talked about the forecast fire weather discussion from last night. It was pretty much in this general vicinity here where the red flag warnings are. You're welcome to check that video out. But we got red flag warnings in effect for Kansas, eastern Colorado, northern Texas, western Oklahoma, and central Oklahoma as well. And also central and eastern New Mexico with some high wind watches there and warnings in effect as well. Wind advisories also in effect there in New Mexico also. We have some freeze warnings also in effect for you guys here in Nevada, Utah, also in Arizona, also into portions of New Mexico, and also into portions of Colorado. We have winter storm warning, winter weather advisory for South Dakota, western South Dakota, much of Wyoming that is, and southern portions of Montana. We have a freeze watch in effect for one county there in northeastern Oregon, and a wind advisory for southwestern California as well. Coastal flood advisory is also in effect for portions of Louisiana. Freeze and spray advisory for northern portions of Alaska. Alaska looks good on the inland areas, coastal areas. Got some storm warnings to the south and gale warnings to the south as well. The Hawaiian Chain Island looks a-okay. Alright, let's move on to the Storm Prediction Center outlook for today. We'll dive in a little bit more severe weather detail this afternoon across Florida and also into portions of Nebraska and Kansas as well. Alright, as you can see here, we got general thunderstorm pretty much for portions of the panhandle of Florida into southeast Georgia. across southern Florida and toward the Florida Keys. There's that marginal risk and slight risk over northern portions of Florida, down into central Florida. Also, we have a marginal risk extending in Oklahoma all the way into portions of Iowa, back into Kansas and Nebraska. Slight risk over Nebraska, portion of Iowa, and northern Kansas. All right, if you live in Jacksonville, Florida, Omaha, Nebraska, Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, Lincoln, Nebraska, you're under a slight risk for severe weather this afternoon. If you live in Kansas City, Missouri, Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma, Wichita, Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas, Kansas City, Kansas, you're under a marginal risk of severe weather this afternoon. The tornado probability, we have a 5% and 2% down in Florida. Same up here in portions of Iowa and also Nebraska and Kansas as well. All right, if you live in Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Orlando, and Gainesville, Florida regions, you're under a 5% risk for a tornado this afternoon. All right, if you live in Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska, you're under 2% risk for a tornado. If you live in Sioux City, Iowa, and Council Bluff, Iowa, you're under a 2% risk for a tornado. And also, if you're in Kissimmee, Florida, you're under a 2% risk for a tornado as well this afternoon. All right, damaging winds, and let's take a look at the large hail, see if they compare. We'll take a look at the winds first. We still had that 5 and 15% over Florida. Same up here in Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa. Alright, if you live in Jacksonville, Florida, Omaha, Nebraska, Tampa, Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida, Lincoln, Nebraska, 15% risk for damaging winds. If you live in Kansas City, Missouri, Wichita, Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas, Kansas City, Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, 5% risk for a damaging wind gust over 60 miles per hour. Alright, large hail pretty much over the plain states from Oklahoma, that is, up into portions of Kansas and also in Iowa. Alright, if you live in Omaha, Lincoln, Bellevue, Nebraska, you're under a 15% risk for a tornado. If you live in Sioux City and Council Bluff, Iowa areas, you're under a 15% risk area as well. Alright, if you live in Kansas City, Tuscaloosa, Wichita, Overland Park, and Kansas City, Kansas area, you're under a 5% risk for a tornado. Large hail this afternoon. Alright. Now, should be coming up here shortly, folks, hopefully. Alright, as you can see here, we got some general thunderstorms across southeast South Carolina, southeast Georgia, down to Florida, Florida Keys. General thunderstorm from Ohio all the way back to Minnesota, portion of Kansas, also down in Missouri, also a little bit in southwest Texas. Marginal risk up here in portion of Iowa, Missouri, and also Illinois. And if you live in Del Monte, Cedar Rapids, Pereira, Davenport, and Iowa, and then in Columbia, Missouri, you're under a marginal risk for severe weather coming up on Friday. Tornado probability pretty much over Iowa and Illinois. Alright, if you live in Del Monte, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Ames, and West Del Monte, Iowa, you are under a 2% risk for a tornado. Alright, damaging winds and large hail pretty much in the same vicinity, but we'll go with the damaging winds first. Alright, if you live in Del Monte, Cedar Rapids, Pereira, Davenport, Iowa's areas, 5% risk for a tornado. And if you live in Columbia, Missouri, you're under a 5% risk for damaging winds as well. Hail probability. Alright, if you live in Del Monte, Iowa City, Ames, West Del Monte, and Kinney, Iowa areas, 5% risk for large hail. Alright, now let's move on to day number 3. Alright, you can see here we got general thunderstorm from central and southern Florida to the Florida Keys, also over here in South Carolina, back far west in Illinois, and far east is Washington, D.C. We have a marginal risk for the Outer Banks of North Carolina and a little bit there in the Grand Strand of South Carolina. Alright, if you live in Wilmington, Jacksonville, New Bern, Kingston, North Carolina, also including Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're under a marginal risk for severe weather on Saturday. The probability for severe weather is 5%. Wilmington, Jacksonville, New Bern, Kingston, North Carolina, and including Myrtle Beach, South Carolina as well, and the Grand Strand. Alright, well I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Hope everybody continues to stay safe and well. Also enjoy the weather because it's the only weather you got. Like these videos, share these videos, consider subscribing if you have not. And we'll catch you back in the next video. So have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday afternoon, folks. And take care. And we'll catch you back in the next video.